Can I show you about a plant that, like many, was advertised as being toxic? And 18th century botanists' opinions on it have never really been overcome. The native food systems were bad for profitability, you see. And I just want you to know that Solanum nigrum, native blackberried nightshade. This one's been eaten up by flea beetles quite a bit, but still producing quite a lot of fruit, is sweet. It's very much like, and please look up how to properly identify it. Let me get this dirt looking thing off the screen. That's better, isn't it? Please look up how to properly identify it. The fact that there's almost no top on it there, as far as, go away, bug. I don't want you. Look at this bug. Whew. And the fact that there's some purple. A lot of times the undersides of the leaves are purple, but the joints should be purple. Just go look up and make sure that you know you have American black nightshade and not British black nightshade, which is poisonous. These are like candy. They should be super ripe. That's why I only just barely ran my hand underneath the berries and watched them fall into my hand. Right? And additionally, even if they do fall into your hand, please be very careful that there aren't like gray veins running through green. If so, put it on a shelf and have it tomorrow, because underripe is not good for you. But these are very sweet. They're like ground cherries in taste. Really quite delicious. Butterfly just landed over. Oops, we missed it. Sorry, I went to go turn the camera around. I keep hitting end video instead of flip camera, and I'm very annoyed by that. So I was being very careful and I missed the butterfly. But let me make sure I hit the right one. Here's ones for a couple days from now. I'll be able to eat those. But with time, and by time I mean almost or at least 300 years, we're finally starting to see better information come through about the native edible plants. Many of them were either named terribly so that they didn't sound appetizing when they're really truly delicious. Spiderwort. Or were told around to be poisonous. And finally, this negative thought process is starting to show some cracks. I've been eating that tree called Kentucky coffee bean. The beans are just a double long boil, and they're quite delicious. If you make sure there's a slice in the skin of each of them, I believe you could single boil. It just has to be a really long boil with a lot of extra water to get the toxins out, and then done deal. Something I learned recently, I was wondering how there's so many prehistoric foods that require these long boils, and I ran across and I'll see if I can find it again and maybe link it in the description. I ran across an article where some ethnobotanical archaeologists did a living recreation study, and they discovered that hanging a deer hide over fire when it's full of water, there's many more foods in my garden too, allowed them to boil the water for 4 hours, and they just had to keep adding more water. And it was just that they ran out of time to keep their fire going. They felt that they could have probably continued to boil that way for at least a 24-hour period. I think it was that they said, but anyways, I'll link it. So that provides a context by which native foods that required long boils wouldn't require the invention of pottery to predate them. Something that I am very excited to learn, and that I would really look forward to seeing if I could try it someday. I have hunters in the family, but the value of skins in today's world is quite different. Probably as much value to that as the meat, but I'll mention it to them in case the opportunity ever arises. So, but as far as things that would need long cook times, that's an option. I'm letting my milkweed pods go for silk production this year. But I took several when they were very young, because prior to the seeds starting to separate out, when they're small, if you peel them and cook what's inside, it tastes just like cheese. It's wild. It even melts. Really yummy. I've also had the young stalks. I've fried those. Wide leaf milkweed. Make sure it's wide leaf. The thin leaf milkweed is toxic. Wide leaf milkweed, and if you taste bitterness, don't continue, because the toxins have a taste to them. So if you taste bitterness, you might have something that crossbred. So stop. The flowers are delicious. Before they bloom out, they're like a better broccoli. After they bloom out, they're more delicate. They're like an extra super tender broccoli almost at that point, but with nectar as well, so there's this added sweetness to it. But you have to cook it. Almost everything you have to cook. So as I go through these studies and do all this research, ooh, yay, here's some more. They're so good. Did you see when I just touch them, they came off, right? I didn't have to pick them. So if they don't come off, they're not, it's not time. Yeah, all of these foods that when I was young in the 80s and 90s, I was being taught that We didn't know how these plants evolved such large food parts. Still, so as you know, don't eat the stem. Just like a tomato, do not eat that stem. And make sure I hit the right button. All these plants that I was taught, we didn't know how they evolved with such large food-looking parts, and they thought it was the fault of giant sloths, and that there was no way that they could have reproduced because animals don't take it around. So how were they spreading? That's human farming. We just didn't recognize farming in the sense that it was done in the Americas, which was to use plants that weren't usable raw. And so the animals didn't go after the crops. They could be collected at leisure. At the right time, but at leisure. Many fell out of the trees. Kentucky coffee bean does not. It stays up in the trees. So there would be some amount of either coppicing or climbing required to get them. So they don't fall until the new fruit is about ready. It's kind of strange looking, honestly. But it's really incredible stuff to me. And I hope that this research continues and continues to be available. It's really just remarkable how a forest can be a farm. And I hope you're having a really good day. This is native food crops, supporting native animals, especially the insects. There are so many insects that specifically co-evolved with specific special plants. And I'm hoping that my little patch here can be helpful to the animals, and that slowly I can better understand these plants that the insects need in order to survive, because they specifically will not put their eggs on any other plant, many of them. Yeah, we're seeing a decrease in swallowtails because Dutchman's pipevine, which is something that looks like a cucumber but is perennial, isn't still living here. For example, because that's where they lay their eggs, and they won't do it anywhere else. The yellow swallowtails? Yeah. So, many things to think about with that. I believe this is permaculture, but maybe I'm getting more into native agriculture than I am permaculture. I can't change the channel's URL, but maybe I should change the channel's name. What do you think? That's the true obsession now. Maybe I didn't fully understand what permaculture was. Or maybe I didn't realize how much the invasive plant introduction was being defended yet. You tell me. This is in vertical. I thought I was just going to do a quick plant cameo, but I did a whole tour. Don't mind the motorcycle down on the highway down there. So hopefully you don't mind that it was vertical. Go ahead and watch it on a phone, I guess, or a tablet where you can have it full screen, just the other orientation. I think you'll be alright. Let me pop over there. I harvested a good bit of the greens on the inkberry, but yep, hope you're doing well. Thanks so much for visiting the cliffside. At least in part, this has been permaculture. Take care. Bye.